Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial. In this video, we will learn how to efficiently manage different settings in our Django project across multiple environments such as development, production, and testing. So why do we need to basically split Django settings into multiple files? Basically, when we developing a Django project, we often need to use different settings based on the environment. For example, we may need to use different database in production, or debug mode may need to be turned off, right? In the same way, in our development environment, we may need debug mode on and we need different database to use, right? So this can be a tedious and error prone process, especially when we dealing with a large project with the multiple developers, right? So to resolve this problem, we can use Django split settings library. It allow us to define settings in different files and combine them based on the environment. This can make it easy to manage our settings and keep them organized, right? So let's take an example of how to use Django split setting in a simple Django project. So let's open our terminal. So here I already enable my environment variable. Okay, so I'm going to create a Django project here. So now let's go in our Django project folder. Okay, so this is our Django project. Now we also need to install the library called Django split setting. So let's install that as well. Just copy that, paste here, and it will install the library. Now let's open this project in our code editor. So I'm going to use here this code. Okay, so this is our Django project, right? So now what we will do, first let's create one folder in our project. Okay, so let's call it settings folder, and in this folder we will create basically a three basic file. First one, the base one, right? The base file will contain all the common settings that will apply to all the environments, right? The second file will be dev.py file, right? And the third would be prod. So these two file contains environment specific settings, right? So in the base, what we will do right now, let's open our main settings.py file and copy paste all the content first. Okay, so in the base we will only take all the common settings like installed apps, secret key, base directory, right? Or templates, middlewares. These are the some common one. We can also keep in base a database, and we can update in our dev and prod as per our use case. So like these are all the common things that we should keep in our base, right? So I left this all in the base. Okay, so now we don't need this settings.py file because we already created our settings folder here. So it will take this settings folder, so we can remove now. Okay, so what we have to do to combine these, we have to basically in the settings init file, we have to basically import these files, right? So how we can import this? So in our init file, first let's import our split, one split settings tools. and there is one method called include. This method will be used to basically include the files that we need, right? So what we can do first, we will include our base file, base.py file, right? Let's include that, right? So now let's first run this working or not. It so let's open our terminal, run our command .py, and so here you go, our project is running successfully. So how we can verify it's running base.py file or not? We can add any print statement here, .py file, just in case for double check. Okay, so here you can see the base.py file. Okay, so what are the things we should override in dev and prod? We can override basically anything that we need to override, like in the secret key. We can change secret key in our dev and prod are different, right? We can, here the currently is debug mode on, we can set debug mode false in our dev.py file, and debug mode true in our dev, and debug mode false in our prod settings, right? In the same way, we can also change our database in the prod, right? Like in the prod we can use a more production relevant database like MySQL or Postgre, right? How we can do that? Like we just need to, what we need to do, just copy paste these things, and here in the engine what we can define that, let's take an example of Postgre. If we need to uh, use Postgre, so in the engine you can use DjangoDB backend PostgreSQL, and here we have to basically define the database name. Okay, database name, and there are some more credential we need like user. Okay, so all are capital. Okay, so here you can define user and then password, right? You can define password, and same the host where it's hosted. Basically we have, you if you are using RDS, then you have to put all the RDS URL here. Otherwise if you are if you are using local, so you can localhost, and the last thing would be port, like in which port SQL are running, basically PostSQL are running. So the default is 5432, right? So in that way you can basically override the default database in prod, right? You can also add multiple things, like if you are using S3 for our static files, so you can define here static URLs, like here you can define the AWS URL, and you can also put AWS access keys, right? And secret keys and other stuffs here. But in our dev we can use our local static files, so that we can, it would be faster and it could be much easier, right? We don't need basically S3 for our local, so you can override these things in our dev file. So other things what you can do, you can create basically a let's first go in our init file. Here we are using only base.py file, so dev and prod are not in use currently. If we print something here in dev.py file, and let's print the prod one as well. If we restart our server, then see, nothing is there, right? So if what we can do to use here, so in our init file, what we have to basically create one environment variable to just specify which environment we need to use, like dev or prod. So so for the environment variable, what we can do in our root prod file, we can create our .env file, right? To read this .env, what I'm going to use, I will use one Python library called Python decouple. Okay, so first let's install Python decouple, right? Now let's import from decouple, import config. Okay, so what I'm going to do in .env, I will create one Django env variable, and I will define dev here. Okay, so I want to use dev environment. So what I will do, if dev equal to config and the environment variable name. Okay, so config is this one, to read the environment variable. If it's equal to our dev, then what we will do, we will include our dev file, basically dev.py file. If it's not, then what we will do, if elif, what we will do, if it's equal to prod, then what we will do, we will include prod file, prod.py file, right? Now let's test this working or not. So let's restart our server. So here we can see our dev.py file is basically imported here, included here, because we printed here, right? Now let's also check the prod is also equal to included or not. Prod, let's restart. So here we go, our prod is also able to read. We have set up this database, so it's throwing the error of Postgre because our credentials are not good, and also we have not installed pgsql, right? So now let's back to our dev environment. If you install Postgre library and set up this correctly, it will also work, right? Save. So let's set up our uh, templates. Okay, what we can do in our directory, base.dir, and then templates folder. Now create a template folder here. Okay, inside templates we will create one dummy folder file here and print help. Okay, now in the URL, what we can do, basically we will use a templates view, okay, just to define this. So from Django dot views generic dot base port template. Okay, so let's define this. So path in our root URL, so we will define template view dot as view, and inside this we can define basically a template name, right? So template name would be index.html. So it should print, ideally it should print hello in our template, right? So we have already reached. Now let's open our URL. So here you can see our template does not exist because it doesn't find in our settings folder, right? So how we can fix that? So let's go back to our settings file, check. uh, so oh, so in our templates, what we did, we have a comma. Basically we have to put slash to just combine. Otherwise we have to use like os dot path dot join, basically join this. So this is our root folder, would be our templates folder, right? Now let's save, just refresh it. So it's working fine, perfect. So in that way we can basically split our settings files into multiple environments like dev, prod, right? So to using Django split settings module, there is multiple advantage. Like we already basically included this base.py file, right here. So what we can do, in we can use any variable of base.py file in dev or prod file. Let's take an example. Let's suppose in base.py file we want to print secret file. So we don't basically need to import, we can directly use that. Split setting library will basically loads all variables. Okay, so if we check here you can go for secret, secret key is here, right? So also what we can do, if in future if we need to basically add the middleware in only in dev file, so we can basically just import use here and just append that into that. So it will perfectly fine. It's just showing the VS code warning, but it's already imported by Django split library. We don't need to basically specific import. We can also create our custom files like local settings or logging.py file, right? Log.py file or logging.py file, right? And you can include basically here, right? You can include multiple files here. What you can do here, just include logging.py file. So order is matter, so please uh, include this in your using order, right? So you can include local settings, so it will work perfectly fine, right? We restart this for now, right? But what will happen if we have included but some file will not exist? Let's suppose we rename this local settings, it's not exist, right, in our local. So it will throw an error, file not found. So how we can, let's suppose we don't need, we don't want to make mandatory this file like local settings. So what we can do, then split setting also provide one function called optional. Okay, so you can use optional right here, and if you delete this file, then it should work perfectly. And it's working fine. So in this video we learned how to use Django split setting to manage basically a different environment files in our Django projects. So thank you for watching. I hope you find this tutorial helpful.